Hello, I'm Phil Collins.
And I'm Sam Burns, and I'll be interviewing Phil Collins.
Yes.
So Phil, where did the idea for selling England by the pound come from?
Another day in paradise.
Some excellent drumming on there. Did you do all the drumming?
Invisible touch.
What's your favourite part of selling England by the pound?
In the air tonight. Hello, welcome to In the Court of the Wenton King. Today we're reviewing another Genesis album. It involves this. You've got there, that's yours. Right. Can I buy that?
Yep.
It's broke, but
It will cost one of your English pounds, please.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
There. That! Selling England by the pound. Before we start, I think we should deal with the elephant in the room. Whenever people mention Genesis, they think of the evil Phil Collins. The evil took over and made nasty pop music instantly and destroyed the band with his evil pop. That's not actually true. I think it was deliberately perpetuated by NME kind of scumbags and that kind of stuff. Phil Collins is an amazing drummer, or was an amazing drummer, and was brought into the band to be the muso. Actually, he's the muso. They were struggling live. They needed a solid musician-y person. And he's the musician-y person in the band, and his influence into the band in the 70s is fusion. And the idea that Peter Gabriel left, because he wrote all the songs, and then they changed after that. Then Phil Collins wrote all the songs, is nonsense as well. But really, Genesis is Tony Banks. He's the main writer in all of it, right from Genesis to Revelation, the good stuff, to that stuff. He's always been the main writer, but it's at the same time been, to a certain extent, a democracy. Good.
Okay, thanks for that lengthy introduction, Kev.
So we're doing Selling England by the Pound.
Yeah.
A very, very strange album, really. Yes, last week I was talking about how unique Foxtrot is. This is more unique, if that makes any sense. There's 3 albums of the Foxtrot style. There's kind of only one of these. They did return to this later on, but it was never really the same. This is mad and weird and unique, and it's not mad like Beefheart, just noises and being shouty and crazy. It's weird. It is weird and English, and that's cool. And it's incredibly influential. I've read an interview with, it was like an interview of several different people at once in a prog magazine. It was Steve Hackett and people like Neil Morse, I think maybe Mike Portnoy, guy from Marillion. And Steve Hackett said that at the time, and I think now, Tony Banks and Mike Rutherford considered this album a failure, and they all burst out laughing because it's held up as a moment of prog, and it is. But I do think it's flawed, and it's not all good. When it's good, it's fantastic, but it's not all good.
It's a difficult album to review because there is a broad consensus about the album, broad consensus about which of the weak tracks on the album, there is a danger you're just going to end up reiterating the consensus. I'm in a rather unique position of I hadn't heard this at the beginning of the week. This is the first time I heard it, and the first time I listened to it I was a little bit
Yeah.
But I tell you what, Kev, by the end of the week I think the triumvirate of Abbey Road, Dark Side of the Moon, The Wall has become a quintuplet. This is an awesome album.
Goodness me.
Obviously, last week I was coming off the back of a bit of an illness. I didn't really get into Foxtrot. I enjoyed Supper's Ready, and I've listened to that consequently this week. I listened to it about 5 times on the bounce.
All right.
What you notice is that actually this follows on perfectly from Supper's Ready. You could put Supper's Ready on the beginning of this.
You could.
And it would sound part of the same album. It'd be a really, 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 really long album.
Yeah.
Genesis, it seems to me, are a slightly problematic band in the sense that, they're obviously trying to be proggy. It's interesting you sort of said Phil Collins' fusion thing. He did say about this album, he was trying to push them more towards the Yes side of things. He was going to watch.
He was going to see them.
A lot of Yes.
Yeah.
And sort of become a popular band who's also proggy, sort of like Pink Floyd, is a very, very difficult thing to do because obviously you're trying to be technically proficient and you're trying to have broad appeal. And what the Genesis style seems to be a little bit like a kid in a sweet shop. We'll do this, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do this, and it's all very, very impenetrable on the first listen. But what that does mean is that if you do listen to it a few times and you start to unravel it, it's an incredibly satisfying listen, and you start to appreciate the sort of the moments where they actually do settle on a sort of like a musical idea and sort of play with it for a little while. And there's a few moments like this on the album.
Yeah, which happens probably here more than Foxtrot.
Yeah. There is no sort of on Foxtrot Supper's Ready. There's the 666 moment, which is obviously the pinnacle.
Yeah.
There's no. I don't
Huge
think
denouement.
there's no one major pinnacle on this album, but I think that just speaks of its broad quality.
Yeah, it is more of an album.
Yeah.
It's not a concept album exactly, but it's very much one statement in the way that Foxtrot isn't.
So really, I mean, this is a fantastic album, which again is broadly in line with the consensus.
I don't think there's anything like that at all in the world. And it's partially, I mean, you've got a vocalist who likes soul, who's trying to do English folk with fusion playing on top of that. That's really weird. And you've got, sort of riffy person, and you've got sort of kind of frip, ethereal guitar stuff. You describe all that and you think, But it is cohesive, isn't it? It's one thing.
It's strange, you say this is Tony Banks' band. It's striking that the keyboards and the piano, particularly on Foxtrot, I think it kind of let it down, that sort of sound they had, the Hammond organ sort of piercing sound wasn't particularly, it's much more mellow on this, and it's because they've got some new equipment basically, and more things you could do.
Much better production, much better equipment, but better arrangements, and the music itself has become slicker. And of course, it isn't just an album, it was a show. I've seen that show. How can I have seen that show if I was born in 1978? There are cover bands. This is the best one, called The Musical Box from Quebec. So I've seen Selling England by the Pound, because this cover band do it exactly like Genesis, and I could just pretend it was Genesis I was watching. They're not the only one. There's loads of bands throughout the world doing this show. But it's not the show we're talking about, it's the album.
Okay then, on with the album.
Track 1 is
Dancing with the Moonlit Knight.
Yes. What sort of title is that? This is the weirdest song on the album, I think. It's fantastic that it introduces the album, obviously with the a cappella bit at the start, and then there's all the weird fusiony stuff, and the main theme written by Steve Hackett. That's Steve Hackett who wrote that. But I think it's Peter Gabriel's weirdness gives it that edge, and of course it's a sort of it's a change, because it's not that sort of, not the repressed Victorian thing. It's a satire, so there's a bit more of a real life, but mixed with this weird English fantasy, which is brilliant. And the lyrics to Dancing with the Moonlit Knight, I don't know about the rest of the album, but Dancing with the Moonlit Knight particularly, are brilliant. Some fantastic lines in there.
I think this sort of encapsulates what I was saying earlier about Genesis, in the sense that you listen to it the first time, there's something there, you're not 100% sure what it is, but when it settles on the musical idea at the end, which is quite a gentle, sort of almost arpeggio thing, that is a really nice moment. Yeah. And it's that sort of makes you think, I'm going to listen to this again. But yeah, it's not immediately accessible.
No, it's not. No,
it's one of the sort of big compositions on the album. It seems to be big composition, shorter, more digestible piece than big composition seems to happen.
Yes.
Broadly in that order.
Yeah, but it is weirder. It's weirder than even Willow Farm. It's weirder. The chorus, a almost silly chorus, but it's that juxtaposed with back into that riff on the mellotron. There's a fat old lady outside the saloon, laying out the credit card she plays Fortune. All that stuff. Green Shield stamps. Brilliant.
Yeah, a lot of very English references in there, aren't there, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, this is Peter Gabriel at his best.
It's probably one of the best tracks on the album.
It's what I think of if people say Selling England by the Pound, that's the song you think of.
Yeah.
Track 2.
I Know What I Like.
I Know What I Like, In Your Wardrobe. This is the single. Genesis making a single. Controversial. I think it only got to like number 19, but that was because they refused to go on Top of the Pops. Irony. It works better as part of the album than a song on its own, and all the stuff about lawnmowers, 1 o'clock and time for lunch. Peter Gabriel only had to do it once, one tour. Phil Collins had to sing it pretty much every tour they ever did. There's only a couple of tours they didn't play it. And as a separate song, it stands up less well. And without Peter Gabriel's weirdness, it stands up less well as well. So it's surprising they've played it so much. Probably because it's a kind of jam.
I think it was born out of a jam, wasn't it? It was sort of it was Phil Collins and Steve Hackett.
Yeah, jam. And of course, I think the strongest thing about it is the drumming, which is Phil doing a Ringo impression.
The lyrics are really good, apart from the chorus.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? The chorus goes da 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 da.
It's. I mean, they need something on there to hook you in.
Yeah,
and this is it. I mean, you can sing. You can listen to first iteration of I Know What I Like and I Like What I Know, and you can sing along with it.
That's true.
Which is quite nice.
Yeah.
But the lyrics that are around that are really cool. I like it. Sing along with it. And again, it's that moment where they've got one musical idea. There's no sort of...
Yeah. They haven't gone off and...
No, and they're sitting on it and they're playing it. And it's nice. It's an easy listen. It gets you ready for the next...
Exactly, yeah. You couldn't go from Dancing with the Moonlit Knight to Firth of Fifth.
Yeah.
Track 3.
Firth of Fifth.
Firth of Fifth. I love the title. I think it's a musical reference because you've got Firth of Fourth, which is obviously in Scotland. Fourth, Fifth, of course. Yeah. I think what's significant about this is I don't hear the Peter Gabriel thing in there. I think it's credited to all of them, but it is very much a Tony Banks composition. Obviously, his thing, and that could have been on the albums after Peter had left. Quite easily, it could have been on Trick of the Tail or Wind and Wuthering, or so from a compositional point of view, it's Tony Banks. But what people remember about it, what guitar solos did Genesis have? That's the guitar solo that Genesis had. Is that fantastic Steve Hackett sustain solo? Everyone talks about the sustain and how amazing it is. I mean, we did Camel obviously, and I talked so much about how Andy Latimer's guitar is so ethereal. But he said he himself considers himself a blues guitarist, so there is that element to it. There is no blues in this at all. This is 100% European electric guitar playing, so he's ignored everything that's happened. He's very much influenced by Fripp, obviously, but he does his own thing. He's much more melodic than Fripp, obviously, who does crazy things, and that's very special. And obviously that's the famous example of it.
I'm not sure if that guitar solo is not just a reprise of the melody that the flute does.
It is, and that was what it was originally written as, but he just played it on the electric.
I have to say, without this guitar solo, I'd be a bit tepid about this song, which is not with the consensus.
No, it's not.
The broad consensus is this is an epic.
Yeah, this is another song they played forever.
Yeah.
Even in 2007 they played the middle bit.
The middle bit and the end bit's quite good. I think the intro, which everyone says is really nice, it's very piano-y.
It is very piano-y, yeah.
And I think maybe it's I listen to a lot of piano music.
Yeah, so it will sound a bit vanilla.
It does sound a little bit vanilla to me.
In the first few shows, I don't know how many shows they played that live, and there was a big prestigious show at the Rainbow, not the one they recorded, and he screwed it up, apparently. He just went all over the place. Apparently, if you put the actual time signatures on it, it is mad. It's like 15, 16, and then 11 or so, I don't know. And he messed it up, and they never played it again. But it is one of the important moments on the album.
The guitar solo is genuinely fantastic.
Sublime.
And it's a very good example of, it's not a technical guitar solo in the sense that it's fantastically
difficult.
difficult.
It's actually not difficult.
It's just brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, it's how he, that's a great example of, it's not, Steve Hackett isn't famous because he has superhuman dexterity. That's, none of these people do. It's because what they do is unique and special.
Okay, that takes us on to another track there is a lot of consensus about.
Is there? I don't know. Yeah, More Fool Me. Bracket, vocals fill. It must be a sign of things to come. Led Zeppelin didn't do what everyone wanted to hear. They left that to the Bee Gees. This sounds like the Bee Gees, actually, to me. I think that's that kind of thing. It isn't anything to do with what they did in the 80s, though. It doesn't sound like those horrible dreary ballads that were Phil's fault. They weren't Phil's fault, they're all doing it. It's just a pop song. Well, no, not really a pop song, really. It is a love song. In that sense, it's controversial. But again, you can't go from Firth of Fifth to Battle of Epping Forest. So it just makes the album flow right. But I don't remember it's there.
That's right, because I do. I really like this song.
Really?
It's just the right side of cheesy.
Oh, exactly, yeah. It sounds genuine, unlike the...
I was hoping to get hold of someone who would have actually listened to this when it came out and see if their opinion of it was the same as it is now, because it seems a lot of people are just relating this to the 80s Phil Collins stuff.
Yeah.
Which obviously hadn't happened then. It's actually a very pleasant song.
Yeah, it worked. They didn't play it live very much. Thankfully, they happened to play it when they recorded it. His voice developed over the years, so at this point he has a much softer voice. And especially the high bits, and he is, to a certain extent, sounds like a drama school singer, because he is. But there's a genuineness to it, isn't there?
Yeah.
Which is cool, and a softness, which Gabriel wouldn't do. Track 5.
The Battle of Epping Forest.
Okay, this is the only song I really have a problem with this album. It's 11 minutes something, I think. I think it's over 11 minutes, or about 11 minutes. Has moments of excellence. In fact, if you want to demonstrate to someone what a fantastic drummer Phil Collins is, play them Battle of Epping Forest. particularly the remix where the drums are a bit up a bit, and there's some fantastic playing in there. But this is the follow-up to Get Them Out by Friday. It's the mini rock opera in a song, and obviously Peter Gabriel has put a lot into this. All these different characters, and it goes on and on and on, all these different stuff going on. What happened was, of course, is that they wrote the whole backing track, all this stuff going on, and then Peter Gabriel writes all his stuff over the top with millions of lyrics, blah, 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 all the way across it. And that means it's too busy and you can't focus on one thing at once. So I think as a whole, I don't think it works, but there's fantastic bits in there. And there's some really funny bits as well.
Yeah.
I like You Are a Robin Hood.
Picnic.
Yeah, picnic. Picnic. And it's kind of, it's pigs again kind of thing, isn't it? And Here Come the Cavalry. And it's enjoyable to listen to. Apparently nightmare to play live, and you can hear, because there's all changes in it, where I think they put the changes where the lyrics had to, it must have been so hard to sing as well, and remember all those lyrics.
Yeah, it's very, very dense. It's sort of, that's Peter Gabriel at his worst, and he's very dense lyrics. It is quite a lot to take in, which again requires multiple listening. If you actually sit there with the lyrics and read the lyrics as he's singing, it does help. That helps, but that's a little bit similar to Supper's Ready, really. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
It does help if you've got the lyrics in front of you.
I suppose it's 11 minutes, and it's not some great emotional experience. It's entertaining, and that's good. Yeah. But obviously 11 minutes is a long time.
It is a long time.
I do remember being disappointed at the time. The Reverend was
brilliant. That was the thing that really got me listening to it again. No. You're going to listen to it a lot, so you're going to want songs that sort of reveal themselves at different rates.
Yeah,
I think this is probably one of the later ones to sort of come through. So after you've listened to it a few times, you suddenly start looking forward to the Battle of Epping Forest.
Right. Next song.
After the Ordeal.
Nice instrumental, some nice guitar. The highlight is the ethereal guitar at the end, which is another sort of classic bit of Steve Hackett, sort of definitive Steve Hackett in a way. I quite like it. The most interesting thing about it is the fact that it's Tony Banks' least favourite Genesis song. Not only does he think it's no good, he thinks it's the worst thing they ever did, which is very strange. I mean, if Camel did that, they'd be perfectly happy with it.
Yeah, it sounds like he had to do some horse trading to get something he wanted on the album. He had to concede this,
and that's very strange. But it tells you a lot about what Genesis are and why the music has more longevity than Yes, because it's not a song.
I find this pretty forgettable, and it took me quite a long time to actually realise there was a guitar solo in there. The solo
right at the end, yeah. Well, then you've switched off a bit, haven't you? Yeah, but it's all right. But in an album of a lot of stuff going on, a lot of different stuff, there it is. It continues the album. So yeah, Cinema Show, the romanticism of Genesis. This is a romantic album, but not about that kind of romance. It's the romance of landscapes and places.
Pining for classic England.
Yeah, that obviously doesn't exist. No. And yet the lyrics, which are T.S. Eliot inspired by Romeo and Juliet. And again, they are really good lyrics. It works in the context of the song. But really the highlight for me is the second half. It's actually a Mike Rutherford riff, but it is a fantastic jam, some fantastic drumming. And this is a good version of it, but I tell you what, there's some awesome live versions of it, with and without Peter Gabriel. There's one with Bill Bruford.
It is a very, very good... The major problem with the Cinema Show, as I see it, is where it appears on the album. You've experienced an awful lot of music by the time you get to the Cinema Show. And although you're not tired, you're sort of looking at, I've got another 11-12 minute piece to wade through, and it can be a little bit sort of daunting. When it starts, it's not too bad actually, because it's quite gentle. When he's sort of singing about Juliet getting ready for the Cinema Show and stuff like that, it's quite pleasant. The real genius of it is, and this is why I think Genesis, this is better than anything Yes had done in my mind.
Yeah.
We talked about sort of like, is Yes pretentious or not? Because they did the Herman Hesse stuff.
Yeah.
Well, they're sort of playing with T.S. Eliot here and The Wasteland, which is a very, very, very big poem indeed. T.S. Eliot is probably the best poet since Milton. To sort of do something with that and make it convincing is a very difficult thing to do, and they pulled it off. That's
true, and it's one of their most famous songs. I mean,
there's nothing about it, because sort of when you sort of get into the Siddhartha thing with Yes, it sort of makes you squirm a little bit. Sort of, are they playing with something they shouldn't do. There's none of that with this. You probably, I mean, most people wouldn't even recognise it. It's not very fantastically obvious unless you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It feels quite sensitive, and it feels very appropriately done.
It just adds to the mystique of the album. The Isle of Plenty. It's a few seconds long. I don't know, maybe 30 seconds long, something like that. I really like the Isle of Plenty, and it's. I think that's not generally considered a big deal. It's just to bookend the album, obviously, and to reprise Dancing with the Moonlit Knight theme. But I love the way they've referenced all these English things. So that was controversial at the time. It was the only thing English people would have heard of, and obviously selling it to America, that's interesting. But Fine Fare, Safeway, Fine Fare and Safeway are gone. So that it puts it in the past. It adds to the feel of the album. It's a great title, isn't it? Selling in by the pound. And it means so much. I mean, at the time, it was a satire on the Labour government, I think. But it means something now, doesn't it?
Yeah, I just struggle with the title. It sounded kind of meaningless. Why would you write an almost Daily Mail-ish kind of... it seems like not a real appropriate subject for an album.
Yeah, but as it turns out, the album is...
But it works.
A surreal...
Again, it's part of the... You have to listen to it a few times for it to work. I'll tell you what else I found out this week. Tony Banks must have been an incredibly difficult person to work with. And Mike Rutherford. They all seem really dour and serious.
It's public school.
Yeah.
It's interesting, in there's a Genesis biography I've got. They actually say that around the time of Invisible Touch, it was like the public school thing had finally been exercised. That was the problem. They were able to be direct about their emotions. So they weren't, it was boring. So this was the point. It was the first time they really sat down and wrote an album properly, really. And it's also the point where they realised their democracy didn't work, which we'll see more of next week for the first part of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
Looking forward to it.
See you next week.
Remember to give us a like.
Oh yeah, like our pages. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And maybe even subscribe if you haven't.
Yes. Well, I'm just going to talk gibberish, and you just say hello.